Well, things are about to get ugly. We're staring down a debt time bomb right now that could make 2008 look like just a warm-up act. Like nothing really happened in 2008. According to new reports, there's more than $5 trillion in hidden liabilities buried across the system, from unfunded pensions, bad municipal debt, reckless government spending that no one wants to talk about. And the warning lights are flashing everywhere. Gold at all-time highs. I mean, who would have thought? Right now, $4,300 an ounce for gold. Countries dumping the U.S. dollar. And a government, it's been on shutdown for weeks with no end in sight. We're now in our fourth week of all of this. So the big question is, how much longer can this hold together before something breaks? So we wanted to ask economist Peter St. Onge to come on and talk about where things stand right now. Peter, great to see you. When you look at this $51 trillion debt bomb that seems to be ready to explode and analysts are warning about, how close are we to a real financial breaking point, do you think, in your estimation? Or are we already past like the point of no return?
So these things do fix themselves. They don't fix themselves in a pleasant way. Usually, given the way that our system has worked for really the past 50 years since Nixon, they are going to let it go off the cliff before they actually fix anything. I think the closest we came to actually putting the brakes on runaway debt was the 1990s, and that was all of 3 years of surplus. Even that surplus, most of it was hidden because we were taking Social Security payments, and they were going right out the back door instead of going into the so-called trust fund. And those 3 years, almost immediately, as soon as George W. Bush saw that surplus, he immediately blew it. We had, two wars running at the same time. Of course, 9/11 hit, and that was the whole global war on terror, the Patriot Act, the whole infrastructure that went with that. So anytime that we've come remotely close to fixing the debt situation, Washington takes that as a green light to ramp up spending to unimaginable levels. And then meanwhile, every crisis we get also blows it up. So the 2008 crisis, there was an entire, industries built on that now. The Washington's reaction to Wall Street fleecing trillions of dollars from the American people. COVID now has seemed to basically permanently increase federal spending by about 50%. Trump, to his credit, in his first term, Trump did try to cut spending. It was Mr. Smith goes to Washington. He didn't know how things worked. He walked in, he said, wow, you guys are spending too much money. Let's cut this. Congress laughed him out of the room. It looks like he's learned his lesson. He's doing what he can, but realistically, he's not going to be able to cut. We just came out of the dream team here. We had Trump, whose instincts are to cut spending. We had Elon Musk, who very passionately believed in this. Absolutely nothing to show for it. So I think in terms of, are we going to continue running to a crisis, or are we going to fix it? 100%, we're going to keep going to the crisis. If you look at all the evidence for the past 50 years, nothing stops this train. The question at that point is, how fast does it go? Mm-hmm.
Neither side, if we could just break down what is the impasse of the government shutdown right now, Republicans only want a short-term spending bill that would keep all expenditures as they are, and Democrats want to add to it. Not a single fool, except the Masseys and the Rand Pauls of the world, want to cut anything. So it's bipartisan agreement to keep spending, right?
Yeah, Republicans cut a little bit in One Big Beautiful. So One Big Beautiful is tricky because it only dealt with what's called mandatory spending. And the vast majority of things that the federal government does are so-called discretionary spending. So wars are discretionary, USAID, the EPA, the IRA, almost everything they do is discretionary. Big Beautiful, which is the only bill that Congress has passed under Trump so far, the only major fiscal bill, that was only mandatory. And so that's things like Social Security, Medicaid, Medicare, a couple of little things in there. They snuck some military in there playing games and some border money. But fundamentally, that was only mandatory. They did if I grade them compared to what Congress has done over the past 30 years, it was an A-plus effort. They actually cut some things that were politically risky, such as Obamacare subsidies, Medicaid, which is kind of a third rail. What they cut was payments going to able-bodied people who can work but choose not to work. It's more fun to take taxpayer money. So they did cut some of those things. Now, that's an A-plus compared to the past 30 years of Republican, right? In terms of what we need to do to right the fiscal ship, in terms of Republicans promising for 30 years that they're going to slash the budget. All right, in terms of that, it was an absolute F. All right, but even with that, what this shutdown is about is that Democrats looked at what little tiny bit they did cut, and they said, no, we got to put all that back in there. So they want restoration of the able-bodied Medicaid cuts. They want restoration of the Obamacare subsidies, which aren't a lot of money. The mainstream media is pumping these up. It's about $59 a month for the average Obamacare recipient. But it adds up because there's a lot of people on Obamacare. So it adds up to something like $350 billion. Anyway, Democrats, they want all those cuts back in there. They want money restored to NPR, to foreign aid, to the whole bit. So, I mean, essentially, Republicans cut 1% of what we really need to get the fiscal house in order. Democrats had a tantrum, shut down the government over that 1%.
Let me ask you something. How much time do you spend every day on a web browser? How much time do you spend clicking around online, searching, scrolling, typing, endless tabs? It's a lot, right? Well, there's a new AI web browser from Perplexity called Comet that is completely changing the way you're able to interact with your browser. Using Comet feels like having a personal assistant living in your web browser that can actually do things for you across the internet. Yes, actually do things, not just give you answers. You can ask Comet to handle tasks for you, and it literally clicks, types, searches, and scrolls just like you would to get things done for you in the background while you go about your day. Comet can actually shop for you. Oh my gosh, I shouldn't tell my daughter about this. It can make reservations for you. It can book travel for you. It can summarize articles or videos, send emails, schedule meetings, and a lot more to make your life easier. Let me show you how it works. So, for example, you could type or say, find a great Mexican restaurant in Austin next Wednesday at a time that fits my calendar, book it, then send a calendar invite and an email to my colleague, John, with the details. Pretty cool, right? So download Perplexity's new AI web browser called Comet today by heading to pplx.ia/redacted and let your browser work for you. Plus, right now, when you download Comet, you get a month of Rumble Premium for free. Again, that's pplx.ia/redacted. Go now and take back your time online. Now that we're in our fourth week here, I mean, let's talk about everyone watching right now and how this is going to affect people sitting around their kitchen table and, you know, their pocketbooks. I mean, we see, you know, whether it's gas prices, energy bills, like all of that. Like, what will this government shutdown mean for any of that, if anything at all?
Yeah, I think sort of the most fun aspect of this government shutdown is that we've been at this for 21 days now and almost nobody notices. You know, usually
right.
which begs the question, why do we have a government? Certainly, why do we have the 2 trillion or so that are quote unquote non-essential? Like, what, you know, we're taxed at gunpoint for non-essential things. Maybe we should stop doing that. And a big reason for that is that traditionally what they do in Washington, really they do this everywhere. They do it in city states. Whenever they cut the government budget, right? Whenever taxpayers have a revolt, they say, you know, you got to cut property tax, or whenever there's a shutdown, the bastards in the government will make it as painful as humanly possible. So this is called the Washington Monument Strategy. It's also called Firemen First. So what they'll do is the first dollar they'll cut, it won't be the transgender surgeries for the, you know, for prisoners. It won't be the foreign aid to whatever country is getting it this week. No, they're going to cut firemen. They're going to cut school lunches. They're going to cut Social Security. They're going to close off the Washington. They're going to spend money to close off national parks to make it as painful as possible. What's different about this shutdown is that the people surrounding Trump understand this stuff. These guys have their eyes wide open. So Trump is paying the troops. He's paying air traffic. He's paying WIC, right? You know, food aid to pregnant women. He's paying all of the third rails, keeping everything going that people like, and then he's starving money from Democrat slush funds, so things like green energy, corporate subsidies for, you know, solar panels or mass transit in New York. He's cutting all that stuff, but he's keeping the stuff that voters like. What that means is that when you look at the polls, the most important number for Washington right now is who's going to win the midterms, okay? Because that determines if Democrats can get the midterms next year, they can block Trump the rest of his 2 years. On the other hand, if Republicans can build up their majority in the House, then they can do a lot more than they have so far. So the midterms are the game. And if you look at the odds on the midterms on Kalshi or Predicted, before the shutdown began, Democrats were running about 63% odds. That's not surprising because it's a 100-year trend that whoever's out of power tends to win the midterms. Thing is, since in the 21 days since the shutdown began, their odds have plunged. They're down to 57%. Because what's happening is that, number one, voters are not feeling the pain. Voters don't even notice. I haven't noticed. I don't know if you guys have.
Only because we have a extended family member who's part of military and so forth. So you hear about that, but for the most, like, it hasn't affected my family personally at all.
Yeah. Yeah, and what Trump's been doing with the military or with ICE agents is he's been paying them using that little bit that they stuck into the Big Beautiful Bill. He's been using that. There's billions lying around Washington in couch cushions, right? This is unspent money where some little fiefdom is holding onto the money so maybe they can spend it later. There's all this money laying around if they actually look for it, and that's what they're doing because they want to keep paying the troops, ICE, the air traffic controllers, all the things that voters actually care about. They want to keep paying that because they want public opinion to still be on their side. So what's happened so far is kind of interesting compared to previous shutdowns. We've had 5 since 1990. What's happening is voters are not upset about it. Also, voters are blaming Democrats, right? You look at those midterms numbers, and Democrats are the ones who are suffering. That's in contrast to every past shutdown where everybody blamed Republicans. Of course, the reason that happened is because the media was uniformly left-wing, and so the media would always put it on Newt Gingrich or Ronald Reagan or whoever it was. That's not working anymore. The media doesn't have the magic. The shutdown is not painful for the vast majority of voters. Because of those two factors, the Democrats are losing. They're at this point looking for an excuse. One by one, senators are starting to come over and they're saying, you know what? We got to reopen the country. We have to support our troops, whatever slogans they need. So we're getting closer and closer to reopening. Odds on Kalshi right now are that the shutdown is going to last about another 20 days. The magic number is 61 days, actually about 71 at this point. The reason why that's magic is that at that point, federal layoffs can be permanent. Okay, there's an internal process in the federal government where you have to wait 60 days between laying somebody off and they're actually gone. So ideally, in my world, we keep it running to 71. Heck, we keep it running for the rest of the year. Maybe at some point enough voters do actually ask, is there any reason why we're paying for all these non-essential parts of government? I would love to just say, okay, look, you guys haven't had all this garbage for 3 months, whatever it is at that point. Why don't we just get rid of it?
Yeah. It blows my mind how many people really don't care. And then we see a massive turnout at the No Kings rally with no real demands. And so these people are more upset about their own emotional hatred of Trump than their fellow working classmen who are not getting paid, like at the TSA and things like that. I just don't understand being such a navel gazer that you would go out to show hatred of Trump only and not compassion for your fellow working class. I can't.
And he has nothing to do with the shutdown on top of it.
If he were a king, he would reopen the government, right? The fact that he can't shows we don't have a king. Anyhow, let's talk about what this means for the U.S. dollar because people are dumping it globally and gold prices are up. And so what do we make of tangible assets now that the insolvent U.S. dollar is showing its true colors?
Yeah, we're at a fascinating point. Everything is soaring, right? The economy is slowing, jobs are slowing, but everything is going up. Real estate, exploded over the past couple of years. Gold, silver is on fire. It's almost a meme coin at this point. Stocks, if you look at PE ratios, we're at, I think, 30-year highs. There's nothing left. Everything is just exploding. And I think what's happening here is that the market is digesting the fact that it really doesn't matter who's in power. We are on this trajectory where we're ultimately going to have much higher inflation. There's no natural predator to inflation in Washington anymore, if there ever was. And so I think that markets are digesting that with prices. And I think a secondary factor is that sort of on a longer term, AI, I think fundamentally is going to lower a lot of prices. We're already seeing articles where it's wiping out Indian call centers. It's wiping out these cost bases. If it does that, you get deflation. If you get deflation, that is a green light for the Fed to drop interest rates to zero, right? The Fed pretends that deflation is the great boogeyman. For the first 20 years of this millennia, they were able to do that using China. China was making everything cheap. That gave us inflation. The Fed then cut rates to zero, and that's why everything went up. Over the past 20 years, if you're a boomer, you're a millionaire no matter how dumb you are because the Fed pumped your bags. I think that AI is going to pick up the baton where China left off, and we're going to have another period here of 20 years where everything is going to go absolutely ballistic. This is going to be fantastic, of course, if you own assets. For the half of Americans who live hand to mouth, they're going to get the inflation as always. So in terms of when the system collapses, I do not think it's imminent. I think they can keep kicking this can for a long time. You look at the kinds of dollars that are going into AI, for example. I mean, we're talking trillions and trillions of dollars going into that. The world is flooded in capital. A lot of that was, printed out during COVID, and it wasn't actually deployed. A lot of it went into reverse repos, which basically they effectively bury the money in the ground in terms of inflation. So we've got a bunch of inflation sort of saved up. And now that we're hitting this sort of frenzied stage, I think that that's going to come back in. So I think there's a very good chance that we're going to get back to 2.5%, 3% inflation. That might even be the new normal. The Fed has been champing at the bit to make that the new normal, to try to structurally change the trajectory of inflation, change it from 2% per year to 3% per year. Again, that's going to be fantastic if you own assets. If you don't own assets, here it comes.
Yeah. Zimbabwe for you.
Yeah. Peter St. Ange, always great to have you. Yeah, gold just had a little bit of a correction today. I think it was overbought a little bit, but down about 5%. Silver dropped just a little bit, but still over $4,000 an ounce for gold.
Outrageous.
So
same.
Yeah, crazy. Peter, great to see you, my friend. Thank you so much for joining us and breaking it all down for us.
Of course, great to be on.